Commenters may call me out as naive, stupid, or against freedom, however ambiguously that is defined. And let me add to that, short-sighted, arrogant, moronic, clueless. I can go on, but we got to finish this article.
Bringing you law, gospel, and guns. Welcome to Armed Lutheran Radio.
Welcome to Armed Lutheran Radio, a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network, brought to you by Cook's Holsters, American-made custom Kydex holsters with a lifetime warranty and a 100% satisfaction guarantee. CooksHolsters.com. I'm your host, Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran, and it's great to have you with us for the ride today. We've got an awesome show for you this week. Sergeant Bill is back with another Ballistic Minute. Aaron Israel of Fundamental Defense has a self-defense tip about safely securing your firearm in a vehicle. And Mia Anstine has a tip about safety while traveling. She's been traveling a lot lately, and Aaron is soon going to be traveling to Asia for work. I'm going to be heading to Atlanta at the end of the month for the NRA annual meetings, so Mia's travel safety tips are definitely timely. And speaking of Mia, be sure to check out her podcast, Mac Outdoors with Mia and Leah. It's a fun weekly podcast about hunting and the great outdoors with Mia and her daughter Leah. Maybe I can get her to slow down just long enough to come on the show and talk about that and her new video series on the NRA channel. Be sure to check that out as well. I'll have links in the show notes for both of those. Aaron has some training opportunities coming up, including a Personal Defense Network tour stop at my home range in Whitewright, Texas in June. Be sure to check out fundamentaldefense.com or look for a link in the show notes to go sign up. Use the promo code Lutheran and save 10% off the registration fee. Reformation Gun Club members save 20% off Aaron's classes. And speaking of the Reformation Gun Club, we've got some welcome kits getting ready to go out soon. I'm just waiting for the last of the swag to come in so I can send that out. Membership is $15.17 per year, this being the 500th anniversary of the start of the Reformation. You save 10% if you sign up for 2 years, and you get access to lots of great members-only content. There's new audio content every month. Individual Ballistic Minute tips, Aaron's self-defense tips, Mia's motivations, Clinging to God and Guns with Pastor John Bennett, links to all of the Clinging to God and Guns articles and videos that we've fished, full-length guest interviews. I interviewed today's special guest for nearly 2 hours, and that interview has been condensed for time on today's show, as you'll hear. But the Reformation Gun Club members can hear the entire full unedited interview at gunclub.armedlutheran.us. Go check it out, sign up today, and enjoy all of the benefits, plus a 20% discount on Aaron Israel's training classes and 20% off your purchases of Cook's Holsters when you buy through the Armed Lutheran shop. Okay, back in episode 21, we had Pastor Brian Wolfmueller of Table Talk Radio on the show to talk about the idea of the Good Samaritan and how the fifth commandment not only forbids murder, but also calls on us to defend and protect our neighbors.
Well, the old King James used the word charity, and I think that's right because it has the sense of action. So Jesus says, that love is a giving up of your life, a laying down of your life. No one has greater love than this, than to lay down his life for his friend.
Right.
So that the giving up of our own selves, the act of service, is really what love is. Now, maybe there's a couple of things here to say. The first is that love takes on a different shape depending on my vocation. Mm-hmm. So my love for my children in my vocation as father looks different than my love for the members of the church in my vocation as pastor.
Right.
But that all looks different than my love for my neighbor that lives down the street from me, than my love for Carrie, my wife. So love takes a different shape depending on the vocation that we have. Mm-hmm. And these vocations give a different sort of obligations. So my obligation to Carrie and to my children is it's a weightier obligation even than my obligation to serve the people at church. And that obligation is a weightier obligation than the people that I live next to in my neighborhood, or this sort of thing. So that proximity in vocation also brings with it a more of a burden. But that proximity in vocation can be overcome by the kind of immediacy of my neighbor's need. So even if someone is a complete stranger, and yet their proximity and the depth of their need is now going to require my love, and my love now becomes it takes the shape of the person's need.
Well, today we have a guest who did just that. He saw someone in need, and he came to her defense. He's written an article for Personal Defense Network about his experience, and if you carry a gun and you've ever thought about what you would do in this kind of situation, you absolutely need to hear his story. So sit back and relax. Aaron Israel kicks things off right after this, right here on Armed Lutheran Radio.
The Self-Defense Gun Stories podcast is for people who are thinking of getting a gun, and for those who already own one. Each week we invite a firearms instructor to discuss the news. At Self-Defense Gun Stories, we study responsible gun owners who protected themselves and the people they love. Were these gun owners lucky, or were they properly trained and prepared? What would you do if you were in their shoes? What should you do? Come listen at selfdefensegunstories.com.
If you carry a multi-tool or pistol magazine every day, check out RAE Gear high-quality tactical sheaths. Designed with the needs of law enforcement, military, first responders, and concealed carriers in mind, RAE Gear sheaths are made from powder-coated stainless steel, making them strong, corrosion-resistant, and lightweight. They feature a spring steel belt clip for easy deployment and removal. Your tool or magazine can be easily accessed with just one finger, and yet the integrated retention keeps your tool or magazine secure, even when turned upside down. RAE Gear's tool sheaths are designed to work with a variety of Leatherman brand multi-tools, and their new line of quick deployment mag sheaths offer the same tough construction and corrosion resistance for carrying most double-stacked 9mm, 40 caliber, and 357 SIG magazines. Check out the full line of products at www.raegearusa.com and be sure to use the promo code ALR at checkout and save 10% off your order. Recognize, assess, execute. raegearusa.com.
It's time for this week's self-defense tip from Aaron Israel of Fundamental Defense.
Hey folks, this is Aaron Israel with Fundamental Defense here with your personal defense tip of the week. This week I want to talk to you about safely staging your firearm inside of a vehicle. And I want to use this news story from foxnews.com about two kids who shot each other outside of a Chuck E. Cheese in Texas. Two children were accidentally shot outside of a Chuck E. Cheese, Fort Worth police say. The shooting happened Friday afternoon just before 6 p.m. in the parking lot of a Chuck E. Cheese on Southwest Loop 820. Police say the 3-year-old boys came out of Chuck E. Cheese and went to their SUV ahead of their parents. When the boys opened the door, they picked up a .380 caliber pistol that either fell out or was found in the side compartment of the vehicle. The child who found the handgun accidentally shot himself in the hand, and the same bullet hit the other child in the back, a police spokesperson said. Both of the kids were rushed to the hospital. One had serious but non-life-threatening injuries. The other child had only minor injuries. Police say this is the second day in a row they've dealt with a case involving young children finding a gun and shooting it. So let's talk about staging a gun inside of our vehicle. Why would we need to do that? Well, depending on where you're going, you may find yourself having to go into a place that restricts the carrying of firearms for whatever reason, a gun-free zone. This is part of our daily life. Some of us work in gun-free zones. Some of our employers have policies that don't allow us to bring guns into the building. And sometimes we just have to conduct our business where we're not allowed to carry our firearms, and we have to stage them somewhere in our vehicle when we realize that we're not allowed to take them in. So a lot of people, myself included, when I was uneducated about the dangers of doing these things, I used to stick my gun in my glove box. I used to stick it in my console and just go in and handle my business. Now, this was before I had kids, obviously, but even then, the danger was sticking your gun into the console or sticking it into your glove box, or especially just leaving it out in the door jamb like this parent apparently did with this SUV in the story from the Chuck E. Cheese, is not only is it leaving it vulnerable to somebody who doesn't need to have access, like a child getting into it, it's easy for a thief to get in there. I mean, it's easy to pop open a glove box with your bare hands. If you yank on it hard enough, it's going to come undone even if it locks. Same thing with a console. And when you have kids, it's even more of a negligence thing, because when kids come into the vehicle, I mean, there's all kinds of times that my daughter has opened the console or messed with the glove box. They want to open things, they want to explore, and they're going to find things. So even if it hadn't been in the door jamb, which is just ridiculously negligent, even if you stick it in the glove box or in the console, that's really not any better, because it's not safe from thieves, and children are curious and they're likely to find the gun staged inside those places. So those are not appropriate places to stage a defensive firearm when you have to go inside of a quote-unquote gun-free zone. So what do you need to do? Well, you can get a quick access safe, a little lockbox at Academy, at Gander Mountain, at Bass Pro Shops, probably even at Walmart now, for around $200 or less, that will secure the firearm with either a biometric lock or a button-pushing combination lock that you can actually cord to the bottom of your seat and stick it underneath the floor mat or something like that, stick it underneath the seat, but it's going to secure that firearm in a way that a thief couldn't get into it, and that a child, even if they were curious, wouldn't be able to open it. And that's how you stage your firearm inside of a vehicle. So a quick access safe is great for home defense. It's also, you can get the small ones and use them for vehicle storage as well. Now, don't beat yourself up too much if you have fallen prey to the sticking it in your glove box, sticking it in your console. I know a ton of people who do that, but it's just not safe. It's not securing your firearm. You're asking for your gun to either be stolen, because I guarantee you, if a thief breaks your window, you don't have any kids, you're not worried about that. A thief breaks your window, which they're known to do, in Dallas-Fort Worth, I can tell you it happens all the time. Where are they going to look? They're going to look under the seat, they're going to look in the door jamb, then they're going to rip open that console or that glove box, and that's where they're finding the guns most of the time. So even though it may give the illusion that it's secure because it's out of sight, it's really not that hard to get to. So if you're going to stage your firearm in your vehicle, whether you have kids or not, put it inside of a quick access safe and dummy cord it to something hard like the bottom of your seat, and you can keep it safe in there. They also have the little child car seat hard anchors that come inside the seats. You could anchor your quick access safe to one of those and be good to go. There's all kinds of better options that you have than just jamming your gun into a console or a glove box. Now, in a pinch, if you find yourself in a situation where you don't have a quick access safe, you don't really stage your gun in your vehicle that often, you weren't expecting to need to stage your gun in your vehicle, at least make sure you're putting it inside of something that locks if you have a kid in the vehicle that might go in there. Even though it wouldn't have been a secure place and wouldn't have been much better, if the parent had at least locked it inside of a compartment, a glove box or a console, in that situation, that would have been better than leaving it in the door jamb, objectively speaking. So in a pinch, that might work if you don't have a plan, but get yourself a plan and get a quick access safe and use that as a way to stage your guns inside your vehicle, same as you would inside your home, especially if you have children. That's your personal defense tip of the week. Thanks for tuning in.
Aaron Israel is a Personal Defense Network contributor and owner of Fundamental Defense. You can find out more and sign up for any of Aaron's classes at fundamentaldefense.com.
So how many of you have been in this situation? You hear about a gun or you read about it, you decide you want to check it out, you go and you try it out at a gun show or at your local gun store, and you decide to buy. Maybe it feels really good in your hand, the price is right, the size is perfect, but then you take it to the range and the trigger is awful. Now you've got that gun that you've invested your time and your money in, but you don't like to shoot it. So you either trade it, maybe you try to sell it and hope that you can make some of your money back, or you grin and bear it. Well, what if I told you that you can get the performance that you wanted out of the gun that you already have? Galloway Precision makes trigger conversion kits for a wide range of guns to produce smoother, lighter, better functioning triggers. Galloway Precision is your carry pistol specialist. Check out their complete collection of performance parts at GallowayPrecision.com and use the promo code Lutheran2017 to save 10% off your order. Make the gun that you choose to carry better with precision parts from GallowayPrecision.com. gunsforgals.com.
The percentage of women who own guns is growing. American women are more knowledgeable and better equipped to defend themselves than ever before. So, why is it that every time I go to a gun shop, I feel like they're talking down to me? Like, hey little lady, let me show you what you need. It's like all they want to do is sell me a pink gun. If you're tired of feeling that too, visit Guns for Gals, a specialty firearms boutique designed to empower women with information about firearm safety and to equip them with the means to protect themselves. The owners go out of their way to find products specifically for women, and they actually listen and ask questions to help you find the right products to meet your needs. If they wouldn't own it themselves, they won't sell it. Guns for Gals is located at 2035 Central Circle, Suite 108 in McKinney, Texas. Open Monday 1 to 6 and Tuesday through Thursday 11 to 7. And on weekends, you can find them at a gun show near you. Or shop online at www.gunsforgals.com. Guns for Gals, more than just a gun shop. It's how gun shopping should be.
Up next, it's Mia's Motivations with Mia Anstine.
Hey everybody, thanks for having me again. I'm so happy to be here. I wanted to share with you today that I have a new NRA Tips and Tactics series over at NRA Women, and I hope that you will head over there and have a look at that. But also, I wanted to talk to you because back in episode 61, I spoke about safe travels. And in that, I talked about how you can stay safe during your journeys. This week, I saw some headlines about traveling as well. I'm not referring to the TSA incident with a little boy. What I want to talk to you guys about is a TSA screener who missed finding a .38 caliber handgun in a passenger's purse, and she made it through security. The TSA screener was fired, and according to the Transportation Security Administration, they fired her because she was a new employee and still on probationary period. And as they say, you've got to be 100%. Failure is not an option, and that's why they had to let her go. So what they've indicated is that there are colors that show up when they're screening and that the shapes of the guns should be obvious. An Atlanta police officer, he says that Katrina Jackson of Hoover, Alabama, made it through security, got to her gate, and was looking at her passport when she saw that her handgun was still in her bag. She realized she had made it through, and she immediately contacted security to notify them that she still had her loaded handgun. She was then arrested for unlawful possession of a firearm because she was in an area where you're not allowed to have those weapons. So she was arrested for telling on herself. I'm still looking for reports as far as what happened after the fact, but I also want to know if you can comment either on my Facebook page or Twitter or Armed Lutheran Radio's Facebook page or Twitter. What would you do? Would you turn yourself in and let the authorities know that you had made it through, or would you sit quietly and sweat it out and hope you made it to your destination? What would you do? Also, this woman, she was from Alabama, but she was flying from Georgia, and the report doesn't say where she was headed, but did she fly already with her handgun one time prior? These are questions that I have not been able to locate answers for. However, in my research, I looked at TSA's website and I found some really interesting statistics that kind of make me worry about us as gun owners. On TSA's website, I found their 2015 year in review. I don't see a 2016 year in review yet, but in 2015, it says the TSA officers screened 708,316,339 passengers. Whew. That is more than 1.9 million per day. In addition to screening, they say, more than 708 million passengers, they also screened 1.6 billion carry-on bags, 432 million checked bags, and 12.9 million airport employees. That's a lot of huge numbers that are, quite frankly, difficult to wrap your mind around. And I suppose it's understandable that there may be a mistake or two in there, but good Lord, we hope that there wouldn't be mistakes, right? It also makes me want to ask you another question, because there was another headline nearly a week ago that Delta Airlines is no longer going to allow checked guns. Now, that I believe was just a fear-mongering headline from an anti-gun website. But there is a story that I found that indicates that they're going to be making their travel with firearms a little more strict for gun owners. So one aspect said that they're going to zip tie your gun cases so you can't get them open in the airport, which is kind of strange because, as you know, if you've traveled, anybody can come in the baggage area. You don't even have to show ID to get in the baggage area from outside. Anybody could steal a bag. There's a lot of things that could happen. And they also say that at Delta Airlines, they're going to make you have to go and get your firearm from an agent. So I think that's a good idea. What do you think? What are some good ideas for making airports more secure besides taking our guns away? Those are things that I wanted to ask you. And as I said, comment on the Armed Lutheran Radio's Facebook page or Twitter account or Mia Anstine, Facebook or Twitter. And I also wanted to give you some other big facts that TSA mentions. They said 2,653 firearms were discovered in carry-on bags at checkpoints across the country. That's averaging more than 7 firearms per day. Of those, 2,198 guns were loaded. That's 83% of the guns they found were loaded. And that may not sound alarming because those who carry for self-defense, you do carry loaded. So there's where that loaded number comes from. And I'm wondering also, another question I have for you, I'm full of questions today, but how do you, if you are practicing and you're making carrying a habit on a daily basis, how do you remind yourself to not carry on a day that you're flying? What things can you do to remember to not be one of these TSA statistics of numbers that get caught going through security? I wanted to also mention that the top 10 airports for gun catches were Dallas-Fort Worth International with 153, Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport with 144, George Bush International Airport Houston, 100 guns were found, Denver International Airport, 90 guns, Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport, 73, Nashville International Airport, 59, Seattle Tacoma International Airport also had 59, Dallas Love Field Airport had 57 guns found, and Austin Bergstrom International Airport had 54, and rounding out the top 10 was Wilson P. Hobby Airport in Houston with 52 guns found. So let me know. I really do want some insight on things that you maybe have seen, experiences you've had. What would you do in these scenarios? And what ideas do you have for gun owners to reduce these statistics? Thanks for having me, and I look forward to chatting with you next week. Bye, guys.
You can read more from Mia and watch her YouTube videos at miaanstine.com.
As many of you know, Sergeant Bill and I are competitive shooters. We're also reloaders. Bill helped me to get started last year, but I've still got a lot to learn. One thing I do know, though, you need a good source for supplies and components. So let me tell you about U.S. Reloading Supply. Yeah, there are bigger suppliers out there, but what sets U.S. Reloading Supply apart from the rest is their dedication to customer satisfaction. Check them out at usreloadingsupply.com. They carry the top name brands like Starline, Rainier, Barry's, Remington, Spear, and Hornaday. If you've got a special order like primers and powder that you don't see on their website, give them a call for a quote. I did and got a great price. Excellent customer service, fast delivery, prices that include shipping, and a promise to match or beat any retailer's price, including shipping. Call them today, 941-451-7357, or visit them today at usreloadingsupply.com and use the promo code Lutheran2017 to save 10% off your order. usreloadingsupply.com.
Time now for another Ballistic Minute with Sergeant Bill Silvia.
Hey, I'm Sergeant Bill, and this is your Ballistic Minute. Today we're going to talk about some more dry fire, or what I like to call advanced dry fire. Okay, so maybe you've been doing your regular draws and reloads and shot, one shot to target, or 6 reload 6, or whatever your usual dry fire routine is, and maybe it's getting a little stale, or you want to just change it up a little bit. Here's something that I've been doing lately to kind of change it up and make it a little more interesting. One of the things I've been doing is I've been taking all of my drills that I run and I'm doing them moving. So I like to start out with the first 6 or 7 drills out of Steve Anderson's Refinement Repetition. And the first few are draw to a target, close targets, 10-yard targets, whatever it may be. So instead of standing stationary and doing a draw to a target to the front sight focus, I'm drawing and taking a step at the same time. Now, I'm drawing and taking a step with both left foot and sometimes with the right foot. And sometimes taking a forward step, sometimes side step, or even a backward step. I actually do it in a box. So first draw will be 1 step forward. Second draw will be 1 step to the right. Next draw will be a step back. And the fourth draw will be a step to the left, right? I don't know. Complete the box, depending on which direction you went. Now you can do the moving stuff on reloads as well. I don't do this with like a dry fire magazine in the gun. I just have an empty magazine well, and I'll take a step and reload at the same time as I'm taking a step or two, so that I get used to doing moving reloads. Another thing you can do to kind of advance your dry fire, make it a little bit more difficult, is use smaller targets. You can either get actual smaller targets, smaller scale size targets, or what I'll do is, if I'm doing, say, a 6 reload 6, where you draw and do 2 shots each on 3 targets, and then do a reload and then 2 more shots on each of those 2 targets, instead of using the down 0 or A zone in the body, I'll use headshots only. So that's a smaller target. Another thing you can do is, I like to shoot Glocks. Most of my competition stuff, I shoot a Glock 34, but I'll use a smaller gun, my Glock 19. It's a little bit less of a grip to hold on to. Almost all the controls are exactly the same. The magazine's a little bit smaller, so it's really almost identical. But because of the smaller grip and the smaller, shorter magazines, it just kind of slightly amps up the difficulty. And last but not least, use a heavier trigger. So I primarily shoot Glocks. My competition 34 has about a 3.5 pound trigger on it. So my carry gun, my Glock 19, has about a 5.5 pound trigger on it. It's not a huge difference, but you will definitely see more sight movement when you're pulling the trigger on a slightly or heavier trigger. So by doing so, you'll get better trigger manipulations. Some of the best shooters I've ever seen are guys that primarily shoot revolvers because they're used to a long double action trigger pull. So when they get good at shooting that, anything with a shorter, lighter trigger pull, they're even better. So if you're just getting bored with your dry fire and you want to amp it up a little bit, you can use moving for draws and reloads and all that kind of stuff, all your drills. You can use smaller targets or smaller target zones, or even use hardcover targets where you have the black hardcover, or just put a piece of paper, tape it up over your scale target so that it's a little bit smaller. You can use a smaller gun, so it kind of amps the difficulty up a little bit. And last but not least, use a heavier trigger so you get a little bit more trigger finger discipline and work with it. This has been your Ballistic Minute, Sergeant Bill.
Sergeant Bill Silvia is a 15-year veteran of the Dallas Police Department and masterclass competitive shooter. You can watch Sergeant Bill's shooting videos at armedlutheran.us/Sergeant Bill.
So you have your concealed carry permit or license to carry. Now what? Now you need a good holster. Not one of those cheap neoprene prophylactic holsters you can buy in the big box stores. You need a holster custom built for the firearm you intend to carry every day. Check out cooksholsters.com. Made in the USA, Cooks holsters are available in a wide range of colors and designs for inside the waistband or outside waistband carry. They carry a lifetime warranty against defects and a 100% satisfaction guaranteed. Visit www.cooksholsters.com and use the promo code ARMEDPODCAST and take 15% off everything in the store. You put in the time and effort to legally carry a firearm for personal protection. Protect your firearm with a custom holster from cooksholsters.com.
Welcome back to Armed Lutheran Radio. We talked in the past about the Christian concept of the Good Samaritan and defending others. What the fifth commandment tells us, not only is it forbidding murder, but it also calls on us to support and protect our neighbors. Our next guest has actually done just that, and he's written an article for the Personal Defense Network called Lessons Learned from My Good Samaritan Attempt. Aaron Kreag joins us by phone to share his experience. Aaron, welcome to Armed Lutheran Radio.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for taking the time. I know you're very busy. You're on the road in Iowa as we speak.
Yes, sir.
So as concealed carriers, we practice and we train for those that moment when we think we're going to have to use our weapon in self-defense, and we sort of envision that moment where the door gets kicked down or we're faced with that deadly threat and we have to draw our weapon and shoot somebody in defense of ourselves or our loved ones. But there are these other situations like yours that most of us don't think about or don't think enough about and don't prepare for, and that's being the Good Samaritan. That's stepping out and defending your neighbor when you see them in danger. Now, you've done this. Let's kind of go back and set the stage. This was December of 2014, is that right?
Yeah, it was Friday, the day after Christmas.
And this was, you and your wife were driving to a movie, and it was broad daylight, too.
Yeah, it was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
So pick it up from there. What did you see on the way to the movie that started this whole ordeal for you?
So, we were heading down a 6-lane road in one of the more affluent suburbs of Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas. And way up in the distance, this thing catches my eye. And I look, and it looks like there's clothing or personal items of some sort flying out the passenger side of this car that was stopped on the side of the road. And then I noticed the driver's side door is ajar. And I used to be a paramedic, and so I had this weird gut feeling. And so I tell my wife, I said, hey, get your cell phone out, roll your window down. I said, it looks really weird up there with that car. I said, I bet somebody's having like a medical emergency or something. Let's slow down and we'll take a look. I'll holler out the window and we'll call 911 if we have to. And if I have to stop and help, we'll stop. We're getting closer to the car. And as I get kind of at an angle to this car, 45-degree angle or so, I'm looking in the driver's side or through the driver's side door, and I see this guy seated in the driver's seat and turned all the way to the right, facing the passenger. And this guy's just left, right, laying down these close-fist blows on this lady who's in the passenger seat, who's screaming absolute bloody murder. And so, I'm in this kind of initial state of shock, and I'm like, what in the hell? And before I could get the car stopped and put in park, she slumps over in the passenger seat, and this guy postures up over the center console and starts laying down right elbows to this lady's face, neck area. And, she's screaming, help me, help me, help me, help me. She's screaming. And I just flew out the driver's side door. My wife hit the hazard lights. She's calling 911. I was carrying a Heckler & Koch 45 compact at the time. Drew the pistol, came around the back of the car. Traffic in all of the directions came to a complete stop. And I ended up coming up on this guy, extended and hollering at him commands to stop assaulting her. And it took a few commands, and then he finally heard me, and then he stops attacking her, and he kind of like turns and looks at me, and his eyes get real big, and he's like, you can tell he's staring at the pistol. And so I'm hollering at him, get on the ground, get out of the car, get on the ground. And so he turns, he's now kind of half in the car, half out of the car, facing me, and he starts arguing with me.
How close to him are you at this point?
We're probably, I know we were more than 20 feet away, because I kept thinking to myself, how much time am I going to have if this guy breaks out in a sprint at me?
What is he doing? What is he trying to talk you out of messing with him, or is he trying to get you to go away? Is he trying to tell you, oh, it's no big deal?
He was very enraged, right? So the guy's like all swelled up, his eyes are big, he's breathing heavy, you can tell he's amped up on adrenaline. And mainly what he kept saying initially was, I don't know what you want me to do. I don't understand. I don't know what you want me to do. So I kept yelling to him, I want, get out of the car and get on the ground. And so that went on for a little while, and he eventually complied. He got all the way down on the ground and then kind of proned out and only laid there for a few seconds before coming back up to knees. And, I'm thinking again, okay, this guy is going to go from knees to full sprint at me. And he's saying to me all kinds of stuff, who the F are you? And,
right.
Don't shoot me. I think you're going to shoot me. It was really strange because in my mind, I'm thinking, I would expect much more, compliance, if you will, from somebody that's got a pistol extended on them, and that kind of added to the anxiety level. And my thought process at the time was, I'm losing control of the situation.
Right.
And I remember hollering to my wife, what's the ETA on the cops? Because, it was not the fully compliant, yes, sir, I'll do whatever you say because I have a pistol, pulled,
Right.
So I was just thinking to myself, this cannot go sideways. I was very observant of his body language, and he had some athletic clothes on, so I was kind of watching to see, maybe if he had a firearm or a knife or something. In the moment, my biggest fear was that he was going to break out in a full sprint at me, and then I'd have very limited choices, either pull the trigger or compress the firearm, try to protect the firearm, and try to go to hands and not shoot the guy.
Right.
Not once did I ever envision this type of scenario in my head, right? Like bank robbery, I'm out having ice cream with my family, and the masked guy runs in, that kind of stuff, carjacking, right? You've got kind of a default set of scenarios in your head.
Right. The IDPA stages. Right.
Yeah, exactly. The IDP. Yeah, exactly.
You wrote that with this particular point in the confrontation that you wish you had secured the scene differently. What do you wish you had done, or what could you have done that would have made that go more smoothly, do you think?
Well, hindsight, right? It's been 2 years.
Yeah.
And a couple of things kind of stood out. One was that I think as a teenager, I must have watched Cops episodes too much, because I'm hollering at this guy, to get the hell on the ground, like I'm some beat cop in the 80s.
T.J. Hooker.
Right, exactly. I think I probably should have been a little bit more deliberate, a little bit more specific,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, exit the car and take 2 steps forward, stop, turn around,
right.
Put your hands on your head, take 3 steps to the right, get on your knees. Now, had he not been compliant, then we would still be kind of in the same scenario. But, I don't know if part of me thinks that maybe some of it was because, I wasn't specific and precise. I was, barking these kind of dumb commands at this guy, and not giving explicit instructions. The second thing was I had a conversation with one of the law enforcement officers, and we were talking about, him getting on the ground, and the law enforcement officer made an interesting comment. He said, if the guy had gotten on the ground and gotten run over by a car driving through the scene, you would have been liable for a felony if that happened when you're, not liable for any crimes in the current scenario. Mm-hmm. So I pull my pistol, I'm now in control of the scene, and I am now ultimately responsible for not only the perpetrator's life and safety or whatnot, but also the victim. So do the math, right? I mean, it's a huge amount of responsibility, a lot of uncontrollable variables. And I'm like, geesh, had I known that ahead of time, then, who knows what kind of commands I would have given. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
The other point was the victim was still in the passenger seat of the car, right? I didn't know where the car keys were. I didn't ask. I didn't see. I don't really recall whether or not the vehicle was on. I didn't pay attention to that. I think once he was out of the vehicle, it may have been more prudent, because the driver's side door was still ajar.
Mm-hmm.
He really could have just gotten out and then just said, screw it, turned around and jumped right back in the driver's seat and took off.
Right.
So, I started thinking like, hey, you know what? Maybe it would have been prudent, to say, ma'am, could you get out of the car for me and go to a safe place? Either be intercepted by my wife,
mm-hmm.
Who's also a firearms carrier, or go into one of the local retail establishments that was near this location, or get intercepted by another person. There was a construction worker in an orange safety vest that was like kind of standing, overwatch, if you will, probably 50 yards from the scene.
Now, you also, you said you didn't realize at the time either that you knew there were other bystanders, but you didn't realize that other bystanders were taking pictures and video, and that some of them were making phone calls to 911 and portraying you as perhaps the aggressor.
This is a 6-lane, I guess you can, like a state highway, major road, and it was at an intersection of another 4-lane major road. So it was a very, very busy, populated area. The day after Christmas, things were buzzing,
mm-hmm.
at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. In a way, you do get a bit of tunnel vision. I think having been a paramedic in the military and 3 years in Iraq and all this stuff, you kind of work that out of your system a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think I was lucky in that regard that I think I did get, the periphery did close just a tad bit, and I was kind of glancing over my shoulders here and there, trying to watch my six, and, noticed a handful of people out with their phones and cameras. The main video that was taken was actually done by 2 or 3 ladies that were in a car that was stopped at one of the stoplights. The 911 calls we heard in court for the first time, and there were probably 9 or so that were played. Most of them were kind of like, yeah, there's an incident on the road, and it looks like a guy's got a gun,
Mm-hmm.
One of them called and said, I'd like to report a carjacking. And, a white gentleman with a gun and a ball cap carjacking a black guy in a red SUV. The other interesting thing that I did point out in the little write-up was I couldn't hear what my wife was talking about on the 911 call.
Mm-hmm.
At the scene. I had no idea what she was saying or anything. But after the fact, when we eventually cleared the scene and went and had something to eat, she was telling me, oh yeah, I was telling them everything that was going on, and I was telling them that my husband is there with his pistol and, stop this attack, and this is what he's wearing. And so here I am thinking, yes, that's great, like proud husband and
right,
good job.
Something very different came out when you were listening to the tapes in court, right?
Yeah, well, she didn't say any of that. I was like, what the hell? Like I was, I was just mortified. I mean, what she said to the dispatcher was, there's some dude that's beating the shit out of his girlfriend in the car. You need to send the police. Not once did she ever say, hey, my husband's the one with the gun. Yeah, all she said was this dude's beating the shit out of me. And I'm like...
But that's interesting how in the stress of that situation, she thought she had conveyed all that information. In reality, she forgot those key details.
Right, yeah, the main key details, like, don't shoot my husband when you show up, Mr. Police Officer.
They show up, you're waiting for police, they all roll up. How many cops, and how did they approach you when they show up on scene?
The sirens are blaring, right? And so I could tell they're getting closer. And this guy's still standing there. I've still got the pistol on him. And I thought, it crossed my mind. I was like, okay, what do I do in this situation? Do I put my gun down prematurely and then risk him running at me, mm-hmm. or him pulling a knife and running at me, or him pulling a gun and shooting me? Or do I keep holding the pistol and risk getting shot by the police when they show up? Right? And so I thought in my head, okay, you know what? Let me look as professional as possible, right? So in the video, you'll see, I'm in this kind of default isosceles position. Then as the cops are rolling up, I think, okay, let me pull to a high compressed ready with my finger very indexed, right?
Right.
And then hopefully the police officer that's coming from the right side can see this guy's in a academic fighting position with the firearm compressed and his finger indexed, like he knows what he's doing, he's a good guy, that kind of thing. Like, let me try to look as official as possible or as knowledgeable as possible. And so the officer that pulls up to the right side of me was basically pulling up around the same time the officer pulled up on the left side of me, behind me. And so I thought, okay, the only other thing I could do here is I'm going to remain still, and I'm going to take my left hand off the firearm and put that up, right?
Right.
Yeah, and remain super still and hope that I don't get killed right now. And so they both came out with their pistols drawn on me. I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but it's actually kind of an amusing fact that police officer on the right and police officer on the left had intersecting lines of fire. So had they shot at me and missed, they would have hit each other. So, kind of a nice little, scenario that people need to run in training, I guess. So I had my left hand up, and the officer on the left-hand side was approaching me much more aggressively and fast.
Mm-hmm.
And so he had my attention, and I got my head turned to the left looking at him with the gun still, locked in place, pointing ahead of me. And so for whatever reason, I said to this guy, I'm a CHL holder, right?
Right.
This guy says, I don't give a who you are, get the on the ground, right? So pardon my French. So he's hollering at me, expletives and commands to, put my gun down, get on the ground. Meanwhile, the perpetrator is standing there with his hands in his pockets, playing tiddlywinks and not getting any attention, right?
Right.
And so I ended up, slowly moving downward, laying the pistol on the pavement, and then proning out as they instructed me to do.
Mm-hmm.
One of the rookies that was doing a ride-along at the time, after I'd proned out, ran over and punted my firearm, which, mind you, was not unsafe, and, had a round in the chamber and the hammer fully back.
Nice.
A lane and a half across traffic. So I'm like, I got all scratched up. And, plug for Heckler & Koch, thanks for making a solid firearm.
Right.
Which the hammer won't drop when kicked by a police officer a lane and a half. Yeah. They put me in cuffs. I asked them, do you want to hear what happened? And, they're yelling at me to shut the f*** up and whatever. And so here I am, just laying in the middle of the road in the oil patch on a Friday afternoon in handcuffs on my face. And the only thing I could think about was, what attorneys do I know? Who should I holler out to my wife to call? How long is it going to take for them to ask me my side of the story?
Mm-hmm.
Very humbling experience, for sure.
But you said in the article that your experience with them, I would assume, aside from all the expletives, was positive.
Well, yeah, they didn't shoot me, so that's
always positive.
That's positive, number one. After 5 to 10 minutes, they come over and they pick me up, so now I'm standing, and they basically just say, okay, so what was going on? And I just kind of rattled off a very, very quick synopsis, and they were like, okay, and, you have a CHL? And I was like, yes. And so the guy pulls my wallet out of my pocket, dumps through my stuff, pulls all my IDs out. He looks at them, and one of the officers walks over and tells him, okay, this is a major incident, so you need to take all these things that this guy has, and you need to run his information through every effing database that exists in our agency or whatever. The guy leaves with my stuff. They take me to an SUV and put me in the back seat, still in handcuffs, and lock me in there. And about 10 more minutes later, they came back to the SUV, and they pull me out of the back seat. They take the handcuffs off, and they say, all right, dude, you checked out good. All your stuff came back great. We've got some witness corroboration on your story. The victim, gave an initial statement and backed up, what you said. So, we think you're good to go. That other dude's going to jail, and, we need you to hang out because we're not exactly done yet. And so they were like, hey, can you just hang out here until we figure out what's up? And I'm like, sure. So I hung out there for another 5 or 10 minutes. And then they came over and said, hey, we need you to give a written statement before you leave. Here's a statement form. Take your time and fill this out, and we need your wife to fill one out. So she took hers, and they said, y'all can't be together. You need to fill them out separate. And so my wife went somewhere else and filled hers out. We did those. I think it was after the reports, I went and I asked the police officer if I could go and talk to the victim. She was involved in this incident, and, I pulled my firearm. It's kind of a stressful, traumatic, event. And, for whatever reason, I just feel like I want to see her and say hello and see if she's okay and kind of make some kind of closure so that she doesn't think that this rogue CHL holder, if you will, just kind of rolled up and left. I want to, add a face behind it. And so I walked over there. One of the police officers was standing by the vehicle. So he opens up the door and he says to her, "Hey, the guy that saved your life is here." And she jumps out of the car and she's crying. She's, covered in tears and snot. And she just kind of leapt into my arms and was like, thank you so much. And, we talked for a minute, for 30 seconds or whatever. I said, "Hey, sorry it came to that. And, I hope you're okay. And, life gets better for you and whatnot. And everything gets sorted." And told her I'd pray for her and, hope that the Lord looked after her and whatnot. And
you mentioned in your article, you're talking about the incident report that you and your wife filled out, and you said you wished you had approached that differently, that you wish you had taken more time with the report. Why was that?
Well, they gave me, it was 3 sheets. It was like a cover sheet, a main kind of narrative form, 1 page, and then a affidavit sheet. Mm-hmm. And so, I only had 1 page to write the story. And for whatever reason, I thought, I used to be a medic, and, I'm writing narrative explanations on my paramedic forms back in the day. And I thought I could fit everything in here. And I tried to, but it was still kind of a, Reader's Digest condensed version of the story and the situation to get it all to fit on 1 page. And I didn't think nothing of it. I just thought, yep, I did a great job. I filled up 1 page. You can get the gist of the story from this explanation. I didn't know that this form was going to be held up in court as basically, this is Aaron's sworn statement as to the entire series of events here today, and it got picked apart by everybody. It got picked apart by the prosecution. It got picked apart by the defense. You're up on the stand. You're trying to tell a more detailed, robust story. But that detailed, robust story was not in the sheet. Now you look like like you're conflicting yourself, right? So, I kind of wished that I had, gone and said, "Hey, can I, at a bare minimum, I wished I would have gone and said, hey, can I get a second or third sheet?" And spent more time writing and been more detailed. On the kind of more, the other side of that coin, you could make an argument that, hey, you know what? I should have called my attorney, leveraged my firearms, legal insurance program or whatnot, found my attorney, took some time to kind of decompress or whatever, and then write, the form.
Right.
I don't know if the police officers would have let me. I don't know how that worked. But that's not even where it ended. I did the form, and I literally thought, okay, they told me I'm good to go. They let me go. So I'm like, okay, in the eyes of the law, I'm good, I'm on the plus side of this scenario, and I did my part, and that was the end of it. I literally thought, maybe somebody would call me and ask a few questions or something.
We hear these kinds of stories where people use a firearm in self-defense or what have you, and they may see the article and read the outcome, say, hey, good for them, and see Aaron Kreag's smiling face on the local CBS news station, and think, hey, great outcome, but they don't realize what you had to go through, what the legal aftermath was for months and months and months after the incident. How long before this case actually went to trial?
It took about 2 years, 2 years and a month before it went to trial.
And during all that time, you're not just sitting home doing nothing. You're constantly involved with this.
Yeah. I mean, this happened on a Friday. I went to bed Friday completely oblivious and woke up the next day with 20 text messages of, "Oh my God, dude, I think I just saw you and your great Kia on the CBS News. Did you have a gun incident in Southlake?" I probably went to bed that night at like 9 o'clock. Well, at the 10 o'clock news on CBS, they had the first edition of this story was mystery unknown Good Samaritan does this thing and blah, 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 blah. And the news crew was out at the scene in the dark with their floodlights on the street showing where the incident happened. And so the next day, Saturday morning, CBS News vans out front. They found out who I was, where I lived, and everything. They showed up at my house. They knew my whole life story. They knew where I grew up. They knew where I went to high school. They knew where I went to college. They knew my military background. I mean, they had like a dossier on me, for crying out loud.
And for the general public, people who don't know you or know the reporter or didn't follow the case, they see that report and they think, okay, good ending, happy ending to this story. But there's a lot more to it after that for you.
Yeah. So I ended up, going back to my white-collar job in Dallas Monday. It was the big talk of the town, right? Everybody knew about it. News spreads fast, social circles. And so everybody at work knew about it. They, for the most part, were supportive. On Monday, South Lake PD calls me and says, hey, we need you to come down to the station. We need to interview you about this case. And so I was like, okay. So I show up alone, no attorney, no clue. I've never been in that scenario before. I literally thought it would be like, hey, come on into my office and this is your statement. Do you have anything to add? Or instead, I get intercepted at the lobby by, plainclothes detective, and they lead me through a locked door down a hallway, and then through another locked door down a hallway, and through another locked door and down a hallway, through another locked door. I'm in the bowels of the police station. There are all these need a badge to exit and enter doors, right? And then they take me to a small square room with gray cinder block walls and a square stainless steel table in the middle of the room.
The room that we've seen in every cop show ever.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Two, stainless steel stools that are like buried in the concrete, so you can't move them.
Mm-hmm.
Get put in the room, the door shuts, and I'm thinking, well, shit, now I'm on a program, I'm on forensic files or something now, yeah. Guy leaves, comes back, and started asking questions. I can't remember all the questions, but it was a recap of the story and going through my report, and leave the room. He'd come back and he'd ask more questions, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this guy's. There was a point there where I thought, they're trying to build a case here against me. Like, what's the deal? And so anyway, I was there for an hour and a half, and then the guy came back and he was like, all right, man. It's like, I think, you answered all the questions we needed answered and you're free to go. I'd heard that the district attorney had cleared me, maybe Tuesday the next day. But so that was kind of a weight lifted. Then all of a sudden it was, hey, Aaron, you're our star witness in this felony case. And it was phone call after phone call after phone call and meeting and email and meeting. And, hey, we're going to set this for trial. And it's going to be one of these 3 days, either Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday of this week. We need you to block off your schedule. Okay. So, I go to the boss and I'm like, hey, it's going on. Trial's going to be these 3 days. I need to block this off. He's like, no problem. They call me up on Friday and say, hey, just want to let you know, the defense, they got the date moved.
Right.
And so all of a sudden those 3 days are off the table. And they're like, okay, well, here's 3 more days. And then same thing. Okay, well, then here's 3 more days. Same thing. Well, here's 3 more days. Same thing. Well, here's 3 more days. Same thing, right? So I'm blocking these days off, and I'm traveling for work.
Mm-hmm.
Every month or two, I've got 3 trial dates blocked in my calendar, and, the defense attorney keeps having the dates moved. It's like I said, it's just calls, emails, meetings, trial dates that don't work out, right? It's just one thing after another. And then I should also add, the individual attorney handling the case changed like 6 times. So, I'm being interviewed by, I don't know, I'm just making up names here. So I'm being interviewed by Tom Smith, and then 3 to 6 months later, the case gets moved to Angela Jones, and then 6 months later, it gets moved to Steve Kerr, and then 6 months later, it gets moved to another guy, and then 6 months later, it gets... Yeah.
And each time that happens, you've got to re-interview with the prosecutor to familiarize them with the case.
Yeah. Yep. Every time. Yeah, exactly. I gotta go through everything all over again. The whole story, my background, all the paperwork, blah, 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 blah. So they get the trial date in November. Oh, here's the other thing. So the job that I had when the incident happened, I got laid off from. So I was on the job market, right?
Mm-hmm.
I kid you not. Right, you Google me now, and there's pages and pages of stuff with my name on it, all related to this thing.
Yep.
I was having a heck of a time finding a job. Everybody gets Googled now, right? Maybe you're not supposed to do it, but everybody does. And so, I've got hiring managers and HR directors that are telling me like, yeah, you're great, but we found this thing about this gun fig, and we're a no workplace violence company, and because you're a CHL holder that clearly, shows that you will use your firearm, we think that it's in our best interest to not offer you a position.
And they actually told you this?
Yes. Yeah. I've heard that like 3
Wow.
times in over a 9-month period.
They're not interested in hiring the hometown hero because the hometown hero used a gun.
Yeah, they're not.
And they don't want anything to do with the guns.
Yeah, but they had that trial set for November, and we take off work. We get to the court. The defendant is there, shows up with a backpack and a suitcase, right? I was thinking, oh, yeah, this guy must, when he shows up to court with a backpack and a suitcase, I'm like, yeah, he knows he's guilty and he's going to get convicted, and this is his, his gear for, either getting put in jail or deported.
Right.
But anyway, we're there. So to make a long story short, his defense attorney, his main one, is sick or something. So he's got the second guy in their office in the same law practice.
Mm-hmm.
But what ends up happening is his attorney shows up, talks to some folks, hangs out for a little bit. He goes to the bench and tells the judge, our firm, we don't want to represent this guy anymore. Right? Almost 2 years after the fact, and now the defense attorney quits on the trial date. So, and the judge basically says, okay, Mr. Nowewu, the defendant, calls him up and basically says, sorry to inform you, but your defense team quit. So the judge is clearly annoyed at this tactic, and she ends up saying, hey, this case is the longest one that has ever been on our docket. So I'm losing my patience. You need to find a new attorney, get prepared, and you need to report back here on January 5th or whatever, prepared and ready to go to trial. And so, new attorney and defendants show up on the 5th of January, and then they end up, locking in a trial date. The trial, when it finally came around, was crazy, man. I've never been at a trial before. I've never been a witness like that before. I didn't know what to expect. I was super nervous. And then, the prosecutor was asking all their questions, defense, and it was very, very stressful, very aggressive, very hostile. I would prefer to never be in a courtroom again, personally. They just chew up and spit out everything you said, everything you've written, your background, your life.
How did the defense handle your testimony?
Well, the prosecutor started, right? So they want to know the whole story. But what they
Mm-hmm.
did, and they did not tell me that they were going to do this beforehand, so I was completely unprepared. They made me leave the bench and come down into the area in front of the jury and act out the whole thing, and using people in the courtroom as actors, and I'm not a fan of being on stage, so it was very, very uncomfortable. We went through the whole scenario, went through the write up, all types of questions. What were you feeling? What were you thinking? That whole deal.
Mm-hmm.
The defense, they initially they were questioning where I was positioned in my car, and did I really see what I saw, and at that angle, could I have seen what I said I saw? Could there have been something else going on in the car? Could he have been not hitting her as hard as I thought he was? Oh, and so they were so you used to be in the Army, you were a medic, and you used to be a paramedic and a flight paramedic, and then you were in Iraq, and you're a gun enthusiast and stuff. And then he was like, okay, so given your life and your background and everything, it's extremely safe to assume that you're just a adrenaline junkie, gun nut that goes driving around town looking for to pull your pistol on. Seriously. And I was like, no, not at all. I'm like, that's absolutely false. And he was like, well, what do you mean it's false? I'm like, well, first of all, I don't like roller coasters. Not a fan of heights. You don't see me parachuting anytime soon. So I'm probably not an adrenaline junkie. And I said, as far as me driving around, stopping and intervening, I said, I happen to be a paramedic. I'm a Christian guy. I've got a servant's heart, and I saw something that that was happening that needed, intervention, and that's why I stopped. He was like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever. Right. And then he goes on to the next thing, and, the next thing. And it was like, oh, this was the day after Christmas. So everybody was returning all of their white elephant gifts. So traffic on this road must have been extremely high. So if traffic was extremely high, then obviously your vision was very obstructed and you really didn't see anything, and you couldn't see in the car like you said, so you were lying. And I'm like, no. Really wasn't that many cars out, and I had a clear line of sight at that moment in time. Just
trying to bring any doubt, raise any questions about your testimony.
And then at one point they asked, under oath, please detail your experience with firearms. And I kind of paused, and they were like, okay, so you were in the military. I was like, yeah. And they're like, how long? Like 8 years. And they're like, but you weren't special forces. And I'm like, no. And they're like, so you were a medic. And I was like, yeah. And so they were just kind of tearing it up,
Mm-hmm.
And then, list all your qualifications and all your certifications, and what classes have you been to? How many hours you spent on the range, or have you spent on the range? And how many rounds have you put down range? And what kind of guns do you have? And just getting into the weeds, man. And I didn't even shoot anyone. Just, they just open up their whole life, mm-hmm. and try to make you look as bad as possible.
Try to make you look worse than a guy that's beating a woman in the front seat of a car.
Right. When it came time for, I guess, his defense, the victim, who I had heard for the last 2 years wasn't cooperating with anybody, decides to cooperate with the defense. I guess he got on stand and said, it was all in my imagination, that nothing happened, and I made the whole thing up in order to justify my firearms career. During this 2-year period, there was no financial benefit to this whole thing. I mean, I lost thousands of dollars over,
right.
from lost wages and lost time. I felt so deceived.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty jacked up.
Well, you said in conclusion that you've still got a servant's heart, but you're understandably hesitant about whether or not you would do this again. You said the bar's been raised as far as what it would take to get you to act in defense of a stranger again. Talk a little about that.
I don't know. I just don't know, especially with a domestic violence situation, where I would be at. It would probably come down to that moment, right? Like a split decision. Everything's a split decision. I feel like I just feel like eternally I'm that bar is raised. Like I'm saving my firearm usage for only that moment where my life or the life of somebody around me is in imminent danger, to the point where I need to actually draw the firearm and pull the trigger. I don't think I guess what you could say is, I don't think that I'll be pulling my firearm in a situation to, kind of mitigate something like that, or for me, moving forward, it needs to be a much more defined, clear-cut event, and it needs to be against me, or my family, or, someone close to me. I mean, that,
right.
Like I wrote in the article, I mean, it's, it just has to, the bar has to get raised. I'm not going through this again, without there's just no way. I'm not going through it again. Not for that. Not for what I got from it.
Right.
Not from, not for the victim to turn around and, turn on me, if you will. I'm just looking at things differently.
And that's why I wanted to talk to you and wanted to give you an opportunity to share your story with my audience, because, you'll hear a lot of people say things like, oh, I'd do this, or oh, I'd do that. And they don't think about or hear the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would say.
Mm-hmm.
What are the consequences beyond actually pulling the trigger? You never even pulled the trigger.
Right.
And your life changed dramatically. And now you completely have a different way of thinking about these situations. And hopefully you're having gone through it and sharing these experiences with people. Other people will think about these things too before they make that decision to intervene in a situation like this. This could have ramifications for your career. It could have having your entire life exposed to the public, and your entire view of humanity sort of changed a bit, because you had the person that you rescued go from tears and snot of joy to turning on you, and when it came time to actually go to court. You may not feel like it, but you're a hero, and you put yourself at risk to defend your neighbor, and hopefully now you're able to use these experiences, and through this interview and your article and other venues, you can help people think about this awesome responsibility that we all take on when we decide to carry a firearm.
Yeah.
Aaron, Kreag, Christ's blessings to you. Thank you for your service to our country, and thank you for sharing your experience here on Armed Lutheran Radio.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. Thanks for having me.
And that's going to wrap it up for this week. Thank you to all of my awesome contributors, Sergeant Bill Silvia, Aaron Israel, and Mia Anstine. Pastor John Bennett will be back with us next week. And a special thank you to our guest, Aaron Kreag, for joining us today. And thank you, dear listener, for joining us, for downloading and subscribing. I hope you'll join us again next week. Until then, keep shooting, keep praying. We'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Armed Lutheran Radio. For show notes, be sure to visit our website at www.armedlutheran.us. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, and TuneIn. This podcast is made possible by Cook's Holsters and contributions from listeners like you.